Welcome to Jessie at Home. In this tutorial I'm going to show you a little bit about attaching some appliques and even putting some beads on them. This particular item is a skirt. It's the Emily skirt. The details about that can be found in the post that in the blog post that this tutorial is on. If you happen to be watching this through YouTube and you did not come here through jessieathome.com, if you look down here underneath the video, there is a description section in YouTube, and that description to this video will give you the link to get you to the blog post where you'll see some full pictures of this from afar, and also the details on the Emily skirt as well, along with the links to the patterns. The patterns for these 3 flowers and this leaf are all free patterns, and the links for those 3 free patterns will be on there as well. What I've done with this is I've created these 3 picot flower patterns. There's the small, the medium, and the large, and these 2 little picot leaves. And I have sewn them on using quilting thread, okay? So that is, let me grab one. Here we have it. Here's Coats Dual Duty Extra Strong Hand Quilting. Okay, let's see, there you go. And you notice my color is not exactly the same. If you can't find exactly the same thread color as what you're sewing, you're always safer going a little darker than a little lighter. A little lighter is going to show up really vibrantly, whereas a little darker is just going to look a little bit more like a shadow. So what I did first was I laid out my design, and uneven numbers are good, triangles are good. You see how this makes a little triangle? They help give it a more organic look, to have like uneven numbers of things and such. I laid them all out, and then I carefully hand stitched them on, and you notice you can't even really see the thread, okay, on the back. The only stitching you can really see are kind of the knots from where I did my beading. There's a little tiny piece of the dark thread from sewing on the flowers, but I just hand stitched them on, basically tacking them at the points of the flowers and at the indent, in between each of the petals, and at the points of each of the petals is where I tacked everything on with my thread. You could also attach these onto a piece of felt, maybe even closer together, and cut out around it when it's all done and put it on a headband or on a pin or something like that. But anyway, let's get on to now the beading of this. So I have, again, the quilting thread. This case I'm using white, because most of my beads you'll see are white, and you can see a little bit of the thread in between the beads. So I wanted that thread to be the same color as the beads in this case. All right, so I've got my thread. I've tied a nice size knot on the back of it. Okay, and we are going to bead this small flower. So to begin with, I turn it over, and I kind of bury my knot right in the center of the flower, okay? And I don't trust that just the knot is going to hold it, because sometimes things get pulled on, especially since this is a kid's skirt. So I'm going to go through a couple of times. This is a kid's skirt, and this is a washable skirt. Look at that. I sewed right through the knot. You see that, how I caught the knot? And there we go, and it won't pull through my needle. There we go. So now I have to try to pull that. See, mistakes happen, but they're not the end of the world. All right, so I feel pretty secure, get it, secure, about that. Now what I'm going to do is turn over and come through the center of my flower, but just off to the side a tiny bit, little bit, because I'm going to string on now this pretty little bead, this little marbleized bead. Please don't ask me where I got it. It was in my stash of beads that has been growing for years upon years. I have no idea. I just raided my bead stash. All right. Now I'm going to come back down opposite of that, about as far away as the bead is wide. And that should help me keep my bead nice and centered. Okay, never run just one thread through a bead. So I'm going to come back up again where I came up the first time and back through the bead again. You need a bead needle for this, all right? And in order to be able to fit everything through where it should go, you need this super uber skinny bead needle to do this. And you want to make sure before you get sewing on all of this that your bead needle with the thread actually goes through your beads, because it really stinks to be halfway done, switch to one of the accent color beads, and realize you can't finish your project because you can't get your needle through your bead. So please, double check everything ahead of time. Obviously, I've done 2 of these flowers already. I already know that mine go through. All right, now you're going to come up again. You're not going to go back through this bead again. Now what I'm going to do is start beading up these outline beads, okay? So I have them over to the side here, part of my arm going across the screen. I'm going to just pick some up with my needle, okay? And you just want to keep stringing them on until you have enough to wrap around your bead. So string, string, string away. Let's see. Okay, you want to check. That is definitely not enough. My beads that I'm using in this case are uneven. I like that look for this particular project. There are certainly beads that are all even sizes, but I kind of like the uneven look in this case. You do what makes you happy. Okay, I think that might be 1 bead too many. Or, I don't know. Let's see, if I move 1 bead off, what do I think of this look? I'm kind of one of those cases where could go either way. I think I'm going to take off this last bead that I put on very carefully. Okay, now what you're going to do is wrap those beads around, and you're actually going to thread your needle back through every single bead again. Try really hard not to split your thread because you want the thread to be able to move within your beads. Okay, so you're just going to go through a few of them and then just keep on going around. Go through every single bead a second time, all the way around. Okay. All the way, keep going until you've gotten all the way back. I think I have 1 more bead to go through. I'm just going to catch that last one again. You can certainly catch, the next one again if you want. It doesn't really matter. But as long as you've gone through every single one at least twice, you should be good to go. And then you just need to kind of hold on to things and pull your threads. Hold on and pull tight. There we go. You see how pretty that is? Just a little finagling to get everything nice and where you want it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle back down in between all of these beads and the center bead. And I'm going to pull that all the way through. All right, now I'm going to come back up in between the center bead and the ring of beads. I'm going to go over 2 or 3 beads and come back up in between the center bead and the ring of beads. And then I'm going to go back down just outside of that. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually catching the threads that are running in between all of these beads. And I'm tacking down this loop so it stays where I want it. I'm going to go over 2 or 3 more beads and come up in between the center bead and the ring of beads. And then I'm going to go back down just outside of that so that I'm sure that I'm catching the threads that are running in between all those beads. Okay? Catch that. Tack it down. Go over 2 or 3 more beads in between the center bead and the ring of beads. And go back down outside of the ring of beads in the same space, in between the same set of beads. There we go. So you're catching that thread in between the center bead and the ring of beads. Over a few more. And back down outside the ring of beads so that you're catching the thread that runs in between them all. Okay, and I'm gonna end at the point where all of this started. Go back down again. Now, at this point, thinking my thread should have been a little bit longer, but we'll see what I can do. All right, at this point, I am going to tie a knot. Okay, how I do that is you can just run through and then run your needle through the loop that's been pulled through once or twice. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick and easy knot here and then catch a couple little pieces of thread because I'm going to continue my work. Okay, there was a little cutaway there because let's be honest, thread isn't that expensive and you really should make sure you have enough to actually work with, which I did not have enough to do the outside of this flower without driving myself completely batty. So what you can do is you can just knot the center to make sure that things don't come undone. If anything happens to the outside, the inside doesn't get lost as well, and then just keep going. But in this case, I just didn't have enough thread to do that. So since I did not have enough thread to do that, I'm going to try to, I'm going to just get my knot buried again the way that I did at the beginning. Okay, this time it's going to be a little closer to one of the points of the petal. Okay, and then I'm going to come up at one of the little picot points of this flower petal, and I have some pretty little silver beads that I'm putting in the point. So I put one of those silver beads on my needle. I'm going to catch just a little bit of the flower where I want the bead to sit, pull through a ways, and then I'm actually going to go back through that bead one more time. So I actually have two threads running through the bead. Okay, pull that. And now I'm just going to go down next to the bead, make sure I'm catching the skirt or whatever you're attaching this to, and come back up again in between the two petals. Pull it so your bead lies flat, but don't pull it so tight that you've gathered your skirt or whatever you're attaching to. And now I'm going to go back down in pretty much the same spot so we don't see that thread, and come back up in the next petal where I want the next bead. I'm going to grab one of those beads on my needle and decide where I want the placement to be. There we go. Attach the bead. Run my needle through the bead one more time, maybe. Oh, what's going on here? I might have a skinny hole in this bead. I do. Let's see, will it work? Oh, woohoo, okay. Sometimes some beads have smaller holes than the others, and you know, sometimes you have to take them off. All right. Okay, that one was a little fun to finagle. Okay, now again, you're going to go down just next to your bead. Make sure you catch whatever you're attaching this to, in this case a skirt. Come back up at the bottom of the petal. Tighten it down a little bit. Back down and up into the last petal. One more silver bead. Catch a chunk of the yarn, about a bead size chunk of the yarn. Go back through the bead one more time. And then I actually go ahead and I do one more, catching the skirt, coming back up in between the petals. I don't know why, I just do. I suppose I could knot it down there, but I don't. And then I go straight down into the skirt without poking myself underneath. Okay, and we're gonna turn over. Now we're going to knot. I'll show you another way to make a knot here. What you can do is you can catch a little chunk of thread of yarn or whatever you're sewing onto that's right by where your thread came out, and then wrap that thread around the needle about 3 times, 2 or 3 times, okay? Pinch it and pull the needle through. Pull the thread through. Okay, and that's put a little knot at the end of your thread. And then what I do is I still catch a chunk of whatever I'm sewing into Do it 2 or 3 times, do that back and forth, not going through exactly the same hole, so you'll just be pulling everything out where it went in. And then clip close. All right, so there we have, let's get that centered on the screen. Okay, so there we have it. I have embellished my little flowers and I have my little petals. If you wanted, you could put a couple little beads on the petals too, on the leaves too, if that makes you happy, whatever floats your boat. There I have a little pretty little floral, beaded floral embellishment for this skirt for my little 6-year-old who is very patiently, amazingly waiting for me to finish this skirt for her. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that, and there are lots more fun tutorials for you here at Jessie at Home.